Hello, it's me again, Avon Waters, Pastelist, and I've got a secret I'm going to share today, and it involves my secret little template. How many times have you opened a art book or been in a workshop and somebody says, "You've got to learn to draw to paint"? Well, that's not true. You can be a good painter. I know a lot of good painters who never learn to draw. However, I'm going to show you my secret of how to turn a photograph into a tiny itty bitty little drawing about the size of these templates, and you can paint from it and the photograph, or from it and the scene in front of you. I do a lot of workshops, I teach a lot of students, and one of the first things they don't want to do is draw. You learn to draw on the job, so to speak, as you paint. However, if anybody's watched my videos, you've seen that I don't use a photograph when I'm painting and doing my demonstrations. I use drawings, but they're tiny, tiny drawings using these little templates. Okay? And I'm going to show you the secret. You don't have to draw well in order to paint well, but I'm going to show you a secret that you can just do the basic drawings and end up being able to paint from those drawings and your photograph. Now I look like I'm headed off to art class, but these are just a small stack, probably half of the drawing pads that I have, using those templates. And inside these are many, many drawings that I've done from life and I've done from photographs. These are what I end up painting from. Now I will, if I'm doing plein air, I will look back at what I'm painting to get highlights and some other things, but the drawings are capturing the essence of what I paint from. And the same is true with the photographs. We have to simplify, whether you're painting from life or you're painting from drawings, we have to simplify our subject into basic shapes and a few shades of value, whether the color values or, in the case of my nifty little trick I'm going to teach you, they are gray values. We've already done videos on the gray value scale of 10. So let's get started. I'm going to show you working from this photograph that was taken for a project on rivers that I did with 5 other artists. This photograph is of Williams Creek. It's on a golf course. I'm going to show you why drawing this in shades of gray is helpful. These are the 3 drawings I did from that. But usually when I'm actually working in the studio, I will do 3 to 6 different drawings that are no bigger than this. This is just about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches each one of these. And this is a 6 by 9 notebook. And the first thing I do is I go through with my templates and in all my notebooks, and I sketch them out, and I put gray over the template area, and I'll run the eraser along the edges and make them sharp so they're nice squares. And then I have some pages that are rectangle and some templates that are rectangle. But typically, if I want a rectangle, I'll just cut an edge off of this and make it a vertical, or I cut the bottom off of this and just take my eraser out in the field and quickly have a middle gray that with an eraser I can get my highlights, and with a dark pencil and a 2H pencil, that's all I need in order to do a thumbnail sketch. So let me talk a little bit about each one of these. I'll put the individual images up on the screen as we go along here so you'll get a little closer look at some of these things. But I'm going to put the camera in such a way that I can point out what each one of these sketches did for me and how simple it was. First of all, to take the photograph and get to a big shapes and figure out those big shapes, there's several ways you can do it. You can do my squinting method, where you squint down your eyes and all you see is big shapes and all the details disappear. You can take a camera and you can put it slightly out of focus and take a picture and turn it to gray. And there's some apps that a lot of my students have shown me that you can download, and it will turn the pictures to gray values or even just black and white shapes, which is what we call a notan. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about notans. or thumbnail sketches, and a lot of people will call these simplified 3 or 4 gray value sketches no-tans also. I'll do that occasionally too, but typically a no-tan is Japanese for a black and white type drawing only, like a graphic arts type drawing. So let's zoom in on some of this and take away what this will do for you. This is another little handy tool. They make range finders that are all in one piece, but I just like two little L-shaped pieces of cardboard to take a photograph when I'm working, and I'll put tape on them, or I'll even tape them to the photograph. This first drawing here, I always try to crop down the part of the drawing that I want to draw, and my very first drawing, which is this drawing at the top, my very first drawing is always an as-is. The way I see this in the photograph, or if I was outside. You see, I have these white clouds here, so the only dark area is the blue sky going across here. We have pretty much a representation of the reflection in the water, the trees in the background coming down, the trees on the side, and the bushes on each side of this bridge. That's always the first thing that I do, and what that does for me is it lets me start to build relationships for the space I'm going to use. This bridge angle coming out, where this water line and bank line meets the edge of the frame, the height of this, all these things are worked out not on a giant piece of expensive pastel panel or paper, only for me to have to wash it all off or brush it all off or paint over it, but in a small 1.5 by 1.5 or 2 by 2 little thumbnail drawing, I can make all the mistakes I want. But I start to get a feel for how this scene is constructed in these large shapes. So then you'll notice this large shape and this photograph, the subject is almost right in the center. Well, you know, there are times you want to break the rules, but is this one of them? I don't know until I draw one of these other two where I put this opening off center and I change some of the elements in the photograph. Usually after the first one, which is, as I said, as is, I then will crop my piece again. I will crop my piece again and I will redraw it. And you'll see that I now have moved this opening over more towards the golden third, and I've moved my river bank or stream bank. I have opened this up. Instead of coming down here this way, I decided I'm going to move this bank as though I'm standing in the middle of this stream looking through this little arched bridge. So I take this bank and I open it up. So not only am I able to try to correct things or make things different to see if I don't want to do the center, I want to try it off center, but I open up the riverbank and I try some things there. Then the same thing is done on the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth drawing. And each time, each one of these becomes easier to draw. So there's an approximation of how this bottom image was made. Instead of having the light on the left 1/3 quadrant, I go to the golden mean on the right 1/3, and I try some things that I tried something different from what it originally was here. Now I'm trying something different from what it was here, not just by moving the bridge and the opening to a different 1/3, but I'm trying some different things on the stream bank and the way the treatment. This one I'm having the bank curl around in kind of a C shape, where this one was more of a V shape going off into radiating lines out of this area here. So this one, I'm having a C shape come around and going off into this direction. So I get a circular composition. I repeat some of those arches with the reflections in the trees, so I've got many different tunnel type things going on here between the two arches, the bank, the trees arching. I am able now to work on composition. Again, I would have had to paint all three of these in a large piece to find out, well, let me try it a different way. So the advantage to doing these thumbnails, which take about 10 minutes each, by the way, once you get the hang of it, by doing these thumbnails, I'm able to experiment with my scene without wasting a lot of expensive pastel materials or papers. All right, to recap, the reason the artists do this again is it gives us practice drawing and finding out the relationships of where elements of these large shapes of what we're painting or what's in the photograph, how they intersect with the different edges of the format that we've selected. Okay? By the time I only did 3 iterations for this demo, but by the time I get to the 4th, 5th, or 6th, moving the bridge further back off in the distance, maybe coming in closer for another couple iterations of this, I have drawn this enough that I know the angles and the arches and the relationships of the bank to the bridge and the reflections of the bridge in the water and the areas of the distant trees and where the bank in the far, far distance under the arch, how it looks. I know my subject by the time I do 3 to 5 or 6 of these things. So that's the advantage. Before you start getting into a lot of expensive materials, you are able to work out the composition. You're able to work out what's the gray scale going to be, the 3 or 4 or 5 grays you're going to use, which then you can translate into color. You know the lights and the darks. The only thing I might use the photograph for after this is to put in those highlights or some of those really dark areas, or to check to see if there's any other reflections, and the way I've handled the reflections, since I changed around the way the bank is, I may want the photograph to see and do some checks with. So hopefully that gives you an idea, and hopefully you've gotten something out of this, and you can maybe start playing around with photographs and figuring out how to simplify them rather than get all caught up in those details that photographs have. So if you like this and you like the videos I'm doing, please hit the subscribe button, pass it on to friends and family and your art associations, and I'll be here to try to help you move ahead in your art career. So until next time, we have a good topic. Bye-bye.